Analysts and current and former officials in Europe have pushed back against a new White House security strategy that calls for asserting US dominance in the Western Hemisphere. In extraordinary language for addressing close allies, the strategy said the administration would be cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory within European nations, as Donald Trump seeks an end to the Ukraine war that would likely favour Russia gaining territory. The strategy accused Europeans of weakness and said Washington should focus on ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. Well, for more on this story, we can cross live to France 24's Dave Keating, who's in Brussels. Dave, we've seen Zelensky meeting with European allies then in London this Monday. The president actually saying that there needs to be unity between Europe, Ukraine and the United States. What implications could this strategy have then for efforts to end the war in Ukraine?
Yeah, this strategy has really landed like a ton of bricks here in Brussels, particularly on the question of Ukraine, because the way people are reading it here is this is the U.S. saying that Europe is an enemy and Russia is a friend. Specifically, the document says that European governments have, quote, unrealistic expectations about the war. In other words, European governments still think Ukraine can win the war, and the United States now believes that the only outcome here is that Russia wins the war. The document went on to suggest that the elitist governments of Europe aren't listening to the people, that the majority of Europeans want Ukraine to accept that 28-point peace plan, a peace plan that most here in Brussels view as terms of surrender for Ukraine. And it was really scathing about the sitting governments of Europe, but really had only nice things or neutral things to say about Russia. In fact, the document mentions Europe 50 times, more than any other area of the world. China, for instance, is only mentioned 23 times. So this has really rattled people here. I think it's not that different, actually, from a statement that came out from the State Department back in May, talking about this civilizational conflict and centrist governments not being very good. But people really have not wanted to hear what the U.S. is saying. It is hard to ignore, however, when it is in a national security strategy.
And tell us more, Dave, about the kinds of reactions that this doctrine has sparked in Europe.
Yeah, people behind the scenes, let's say journalists, think tank people, are absolutely apoplectic about this. It's really, really shocked people here. Like I say, a lot of people have not really wanted to engage or listen to some of the really scary things that the Trump administration has been saying about Europe. Now they have no choice. But, however, the leaders of Europe have been pretty quiet about this, the same way they have been this entire year whenever the Trump administration says these types of things about Europe. The European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, has been completely silent. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk yesterday put a statement on X asking if the transatlantic alliance had changed. Seems like it has, I think, but it was a very, very lackluster response from all European leaders. We did, however, today have a statement from António Costa. He was speaking at a think tank event in Paris, and he was asked about the new national security strategy. He said it would be unacceptable for the United States to be interfering in the politics of Europe, and that it is for European citizens to decide who are the good parties and who are the bad parties in elections. And he's, of course, referring to the fact that the national security strategy is identifying for support what they call patriotic parties, what are really far-right nationalist parties in Europe that are challenging the sitting centrist governments. That his message there is that it's unacceptable for the U.S. to be kind of pursuing regime change by supporting these far-right opposition parties and trying to hurt the sitting centrist parties. Nevertheless, we still didn't get a whole lot of reaction yet publicly. Behind the scenes, though, this has really, really rattled Europeans.
All right, Dave Keating, thank you very much for that update from Brussels.